You can't really build a website that isn't mobile friendly these days. You need to consider all different screen sizes. And so luckily in Oxygen, it's really easy to be able to change the screen size for different breakpoints, and then you can adjust the layout and the styles to suit. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this lesson. Now, if you manage to have the stuff open from last lesson, we can use that again in this lesson just to change this for mobile devices. Or you can just watch me go through some of this stuff and learn as we go along. We'll put some of this stuff into practice as we go along and build the website, but this will be a great introduction on how to do everything for mobile and different devices. All right, let's not mess around. Let's get started. Here we are back in Oxygen, and what we're going to be doing now is looking at how we change the layout for different screen sizes. If you have this open from the last lesson, you'll see I've made a few changes. I've tidied things up and I've added a couple of different sections. I've done this so we can have a few different techniques as we change the screen sizes, just so I can teach you a few more tips. If we scroll down, I'll show you what I've added. I've added this heading here. I've kept the cards. I've changed some of the styling here, but I've added these two groups here with columns inside the sections. Now, let's get started with styling stuff. You'll see by default, when you add anything to Oxygen, it sets it up and styles it for the desktop. If you click this icon in the top left, it shows us a list of all our different screen sizes or breakpoints. So what I like to do is just go down these different sizes and see how the layout starts to change. See, this looks okay here. If we go down again, it starts to get a bit tight here. We keep going down, you can see it really starts to fall apart. And we'll look at these other things here now too. A lot of these look quite good, but we can see some of these definitely need to change. So what I like to do is go to the point where stuff needs to be changed, and I would say that's here. And we can see this should probably be more like half the width each. So we've got 2 columns and 2 rows. But rather than changing this one to say 48%, you'll see that would get painful because we'd need to do this to them every single one. And this is where having classes can really help. And we can do that by going back here to all devices, and by simply adding a class here of say cards. What we can do is a little trick. We can select the styles that we've added to this ID, click this and copy it down onto the cards. And then if we select the ID again, you can click this erase and it will remove the styles from the ID. Okay. Now we'll do this again on these other cards. If we go to the ID, we'll delete this out. And you can see the styling has gone. But if we add the class back of cards, it picks it up. So we're going to do this to all of these. We'll add cards, and then we'll delete the style from the ID. We'll add the cards class, and we'll delete the style from the ID. Now that we have this set up, we can go back to the size where we want to start changing things, which is 992. Now that we're here, we want to make this say 48%. So we'll select one of these divs, and with the cards class selected, if we go to say 48%, this looks perfect. Let's go down to the next size. This still looks great. But when we get to mobile, the same thing happens. We want to make this say 100% now. Perfect. Now there's a few other things that we might want to change. One thing that I can see here is these images are really quite small. We could select these and start changing the height under advanced, going to size and spacing and changing the height here to say 300. But then we need to make this change across every layout where we want to make a different size. And an easier way to do this, we'll remove that, is actually go back up to all devices. And one thing I'll point out here is see how we've added a change to this breakpoint. If you're seeing a little icon here with an X, that means that there's something that you've changed on that screen size. If you click X, what it will do is remove any changes that you've made on that screen size. So I'm going to do that now. Yes, it jumped me back into that screen size, but let's go back up to the top. So we're on desktop here, and we want to make sure that these divs with the background images in here stay at a nice size as the screens get smaller. So rather than doing that each time, what we can do is create a minimum height here of say 300 pixels. I'll do this to the other div. Make a minimum height of 300 pixels. And now we don't have to worry about this at all. See, that looked pretty good. Although there's one thing I don't like, and that is that the image is underneath this column here. Which makes sense, right? Because it's on the left-hand side. Actually, because the image is on the right-hand side. But we can, with columns, change the order at different points. Now, let's have a look at some of the settings that columns give us. You'll see here that these are defined to stack vertically, so one on top of each other, at that screen size of 992. You can select this and change this to any size you want, such as never, which means there'll always be 2 columns. But let's leave this at 992 because that was looking great. Now what we can do here is actually reverse the order when it gets to 992. And what that means is it will put this div with the image in it in front of the div with the text. So we'll go down to 992 and you'll see that working. See, that looks good now. We've got the image above the text. We scroll down and see the image above the text here. So this is something you might do quite often. Now, you don't need to set up columns to be able to do this. You can still do this in a section or in divs as well. And I'm going to illustrate this here by selecting this last one, and I'll change the color. I'll do it on the ID, just so we can help illustrate how this one is different. So now we can see this one is last. But we might want to change the order when it gets to the very smallest screen size. How we would do this is we'd go back to the cards section, and then we'd go to advanced, and we'd change the layout here. So we'd go into layout, we'd click flex, we'd make sure we have reverse selected and column. And you'll see straight away that at this breakpoint, it's going to reverse that order for us. All right, let's go back to the top and we'll do one last skim. The headings are something that we might want to change as we go to different screen sizes. Let's quickly have a look. This feels like it's getting a little tight, so let's drop the font size down a little bit. Maybe to say 50 pixels. And then we'll check this one here. That looks fine, but these look pretty big. So we'll drop these down to 50 pixels. And this last one to 50 pixels. We'll go down to the mobile size. And again, we might want to make this smaller, so say 38. Now, I'm just making these sizes up on the spot, but when we build the website, we'll take some of this stuff into consideration, and also we'll be adding classes, so we don't need to do this all over the place. Let's do this last one here and make this 38 as well. 38. This looks pretty good, and I'm fairly happy with how this is looking on mobile. We'll go through these screen sizes and just check. Again, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with this. And it looks great on desktop. So that's given us a good guide of how we change the styles for different screen sizes. Mobile Ninja, look at that. We managed to get through that perfectly. Now, let's keep that pace going because it's great to see that we're getting through this stuff really fast. So click complete and I'll see you in the next lesson.